Well, good morning, folks. It's Tuesday morning. We are at the very start of another international break, the third of the season already. But Derek and I are here to speak Rangers, to keep you going until the team are next back in action. Derek, aside from the break of club football, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, Joshua. It just seems that we're at the start of a marathon, aren't we? The finish line is way out in the distance in terms of back to domestic matters, but is what it is. I guess there's nothing we can do about it. I actually think there's another international break next month as well, if not mistaken.
There is, yeah. It must be a record because I mean, I think it's because they're catching up on kind of the last couple of years, but. Anyway,
Yeah.
we won't dwell on it. Remember, if you were watching on YouTube, folks, to subscribe. Remember, you can obviously subscribe to the Rangers Review for just £1 a month for top quality Rangers journalism every day, keeping you going through the international break and through club football as well. And if you've got any comments or questions today, do fire them in the chat function and we will do our best to get back to you. Right, Derek, we're going to speak about the period that has rolled on since the last international break. There was a lot of parallels in a way at Ibrox on Sunday, with a big win capping off the end of a chunk of club football going into the international break. With scenes of jubilation really from the team. Obviously, it was from Stephen Jarrett this time. Last time around, it was the team celebrating the Old Firm win. We're going to speak through a few of the games that occurred in September, but obviously in the league, only 2 points were dropped. It wasn't quite the explosive return to action that many would have hoped for. Would you say Rangers are in a better place now than they were at the end of August?
In a weird way, yeah. I think Stephen Gerrard has touched on this in his press conferences that it does bode well that they are still top of the league, even though they're not playing at the levels that we know we can. I think the game, of course, he mentioned at the weekend, it was closer to what he comes to expect from this Rangers team. It has been a tough watch at times. There's no denying that. It's been laborious, but they've managed to get the points on the board, and they sit proudly at the top of the division. So going into this international break again, I think we spoke about the same situation when they headed into it last time about recharging and resetting. Well, I'll give them another opportunity to do that heading into the next part of the season, but you can't really complain. They've not been at their best in any way, shape or form, but they sit top of the league, and that result at the weekend really was a mark of champions. They've had to show grit and guts recently in a number of games. We'll touch on St Johnstone as well, where they're up against it, and they've just showed that they've got that will and that way in them just to find the goals to get the win.
Yeah, and good morning to James, who's speaking about the Hibs game. We'll touch on that in a second. And I think if you look back at that last month, the only real time, domestically speaking, where they haven't found a way through was the Motherwell game, and obviously that was quite I think a unique game in the sense that Rangers really should have been out of sight by the point that the game went 1-1, and obviously there has, as we've covered and spoken extensively, it's not as if there's not been defensive vulnerabilities on show throughout that time. But if you look back at some of the games, let's start with St Johnstone, Derek, going 1-0 down, I think on about 55 minutes. Phil Hollander's obviously stretchered off not that long after, but Rangers find a response. That was and it was also I think it was the early kickoff, if I remember right, after an international break. Again, like what I kind of reflected on after the Hibs game is I just don't think this team has had this in them in the past at all, to go out and win ugly, win dirty, even against Dundee away when Dundee have all those chances. But to come from behind in a second half against St Johnstone, who, let's not forget, in that cup exit last season, Rangers struggled to break down. That was a big win at the start of the month, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Before they won the league last season, going into that campaign, they were winning games, and the chat was last season they would have drawn those and would have dropped points, but now they do have that sort of champions mentality, if you like, and they're winners now. Of course, they've got that title win behind them, and they know how to win games. And I think mentally that's a huge thing. We've seen that against St Johnstone when they weren't at their best. Of course, Connor Goldson missing that game, which was a big loss. And like you say, Phil Hollander getting stretchered off and not to be seen again at the moment, which is he also has been a huge loss. There's no doubt about it. But they found a way past St Johnstone, and like they've done against Hibs as well, that they just have that in them. And I know James is noting there a bit of a worry of only one after we had a player sent off. For me, it's I worried when Hibs get a man sent off at the weekend, because Rangers have struggled recently against teams with 10 men. Gerrard spoke about that after the game as well. They just sit back, sit deep, and just defend for their lives. So it's sometimes it's more difficult to play against a 10-man team. But yeah, they're grinding out results. Douglas said that they're getting in touch, grinding out results so far this season. You'll take that all day long, as long as they get the points on the board and they secure another title win. You'll take it all day long. It's not easy on the eye. That's not beat about the bush. It's not scintillating football that we've come to expect since certainly last season. But it's winning football, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I'd completely agree with you that Gerrard said obviously playing against 10 men is hard, and obviously he wants to he'll want to reflect his team in as good a light as he can after that game. But it's hard, I think, in the sense that you're obviously attacking the box, and if you look at the pressure maps and everything from that game, you can see that Hibs only engaged at the edge of the box, which just means that the game's been played in a smaller patch of grass than is customary, as supporters have come to expect since Gerrard came to the club. And I think what was impressive was just the way the Rangers managed to move it around quickly. I thought Hadji had moments in the game where you can see, I guess, where the development in his game needs to come from, but he just never hides. And what he does and other players do so well, and you'll remember back to the 3-1 win over Motherwell, he did this really well. Also, as he pulls markers away. And I think often when Rangers are moving the ball side to side, so if you think of the St Johnstone first half, if there's a lack of movement, then that allows the defence to kind of stay stationary and protect the space. But if you've got someone like Nathan Patterson, who's always wanting to commit his man, which always means another man has to come out of his position to then counteract that. Then if you've got someone like Yanis Hadji, who, if you watch him, whenever he passes the ball, he always moves, which is such a basic thing. But how often do you see a pass go sideways and nothing is achieved by that? I also thought what was impressive about, if you watch the build-up to the Morelos goal, which was, there was really impressive movement from him in that sequence. But if you look at the build-up to that, Rangers don't just chuck an ambitious cross into the box. How often have we seen when Rangers are behind, either Borna Barisic crossing from nowhere out in the left touchline, just trying to hook one into the box, or Tav crossing from 40 yards, trying to bend one into the back post. But what Barisic did well with Aribo, take the ball back, Aribo rotates in, and then Barisic has his one-on-one moment with Chris Cadden, and he kind of gets revenge, if you like, for what Cadden did to him in the first half, which was go by him superbly and put a superb cross into the box. So I think in many ways that's the impressive thing for Rangers, because you're right, against 10 men with the potential to have the crowd on your back, and I thought the crowd really stayed with the team, but the potential to have the crowd on your back, if you don't, if Rangers had played like they had for a lot of that season, which is with a lack of tempo, then that's when it's really hard. Because if you mirror, for example, that first half of the St Johnstone game, then that's going to be really hard. I thought Nathan Patterson as well was a big difference in that. I've got a couple of players I wanted to touch on, Derek. The first one was Liam Balogun, who is currently at the top of the interceptions metric in the division, I think. He obviously had a very difficult evening back in August. I think it was August against Malmo. Ever since then, for me, he's been probably our most consistent centre-back, obviously because Hollander's had to be out with injury. Ever since Balogun came in and played right back in that Old Firm game and did it so well, I thought you've seen again on Sunday why he's in the team in these games. Even if Hollander was fit, Balogun would have played that game because of how he allows his team to defend high up the pitch. Martin Boyle and Kevin Nisbet are two good players, two international forwards who have a lot of pace. And that can be a difficult opponent to face when you're trying to squeeze the game up. For me, he's been really impressive over these last few weeks, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for coming back from what was a really difficult night back in August. What have you made of his season so far?
Yeah, I think he's done well. Of course, the highlight was been that Old Firm game where he was named man of the match, playing it right back. I think everyone was worried when they seen that team lineup on that afternoon. But he's come in and he's done the job. I think you can be quite pleased with his performances so far. I think suspect, shall we say, last midweek against Sparta Prague, but perhaps understandable considering he and Bassi haven't played together at any point. I think Goldson is the glue. He's you need Goldson in that back line. He's the first name in the team sheet. I know there was some grumbles about his performances. I myself say he's not been at his scintillating best, but you just need him there for the stability in the back four and just commanding and organising that back four. So he's vital. But for me, Balogun has certainly stepped up, and of course it's the big debate: Helander or Balogun. Who do you choose? And Gerrard often goes for the Goldson Balogun partnership, especially in Europe, given Balogun's probably slightly better in with regards to pace, but. For me, he's been one of the top performers for Rangers in recent weeks. There's no doubt about it.
Let's talk about some other top performers. John Lundstrom was the contrast in the kind of reception of Lundstrom from, again, this time last month to this month is, pretty stark. I think he made a couple of substitute appearances at the start of the month as the coaching staff tried to kind of ease him in. But then in the last two Premiership games he's played is that number 6. I think it was the second half or the final 30 minutes against Lyon was when that started. And as I say, 2 man of the match performances. I thought he was excellent against Hibs, quietly excellent in a lot of ways. He was involved as kind of underlying numbers if you look at how involved he is in the high value chances. Again, think of the lead up to the Morelos goal with him just shuttling over and supporting the little rotation on that left flank. Shows a great strength of character to be able to have a turnaround like that in your Rangers career so early on, Derek, and that's what you need to play in front of that crowd, because again there was a couple of moments in the first half where he maybe gave the ball away a little bit cheaply. There was a snapshot he had from distance that went wide where there's still, you can still feel that scar tissue. Maybe it'll be different after this man of the match performance as well. But I just think his strength of character and also his ability in that number 6 role gives us something completely different and gives the team just another dimension in there. Allows the managers to keep Stephen Davis fresh, as you've spoken about a lot, and ultimately gives us another really top class player in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, it's taken him a wee while just to get in, and quite understandable as well, based on where he's coming from at Sheffield United and never had the best of seasons last season as well. So it was always going to take him time, but that red card against Alashkert and I think the performance up at Tannadice and against Malmo, some supporters had already made their mind up on him. Yeah. But fair play to the coaching staff, like you say, they eased him back in, a few cameo substitute appearances, and since the games he started in place at Stephen Davis, he's been terrific, as you said. 2 man of the match display. Steven Gerrard waxing lyrical over him and as well, calling him a powerhouse, and you can tell he really rates Lundstrom, and he is slowly but surely finding his feet in that Rangers midfield. And like you say, it's good to have that option because Gerrard has mentioned that Stephen Davis they don't want him to go to the well too often based on the fact of his age, and he's playing qualifiers for Northern Ireland coming up as well. So it's all about managing him in his game time. And if you get someone, a ready-made replacement in John Lundstrom to bring in, then it's a terrific option for the manager to have. But yeah, he's been like Balogun. I think those two have really been standout performers of late for Rangers. And like you say, it shows that the mental strength at Lundstrom as well. Many players, I speak to players as well, when interviewing former players, and they say some of the best players that come to Ibrox just crumble with the weight of the pressure and what have you. So Lundstrom's came in, had a ropey start, but he's not let that affect him, and he's put in some terrific performances. So good, fair play to him and for the coaching staff for managing the situation well.
And I think you see as well, that's when you see the benefit of having someone like Michael Beale, who seems to be so focused on players' development, along with it being obviously a results-based business. You just can guarantee that he's always looking at players and thinking, okay, maybe Lundstrom hasn't morphed into this Jack role as it seemed they'd hoped at the start of the season, but what are his qualities? What can he do? Obviously he's an excellent player. You don't play in the Premiership and have a good season if you're not. So I think that's one. Steven Gerrard asked for the trust of the fan base, and that's why he's the manager at the end of the day, because he was right. One is just finished speaking with two forwards. We'll go 3 forwards quickly, Derek. We'll fit them all in one. Kemar Roofe, firstly, I thought, even though he's on 6 goals for the season now, and even though he hadn't had a great couple of games before he came off the bench on Sunday, his ability to deliver is quite something. You just felt like he was going to score when he came on, and what an option that is to have with a player coming off the bench. Seems to have a really good. I'm sure it's quite a cliche thing to say, but Roofe never seems to be someone that comes off the bench if he's not started in with any sort of attitude or any sort of ego. He always, and you see that in his interviews as well, he seems so invested in this team and this squad, which I think is a real positive as well. Alfredo Morelos as well, I've spoken a lot about him now since that game on Sunday. I thought that was a complete performance from Morelos, and the reason being, I think he received 39 passes into feet, so it kind of shows how involved he was in bouncing the ball back, moving the opposition around, switching the play. He played 46 passes, which again, a lot of those were backwards passes to just move the defence, but also to that customary switch of play, which when Hibs are overloading in the press is so effective. But for me, it was a complete performance, Derek, because he steps up. He loves goals. He loves scoring against Hibs. It was obviously against Hibs that he got his first goal at Ibrox back in 2017 in that 3-2 defeat with a diving header almost obviously it was at the other end of the stadium, but in a similar vein. That for me was kind of the complete Morelos performance. And what we need this season, it was the same with Ross County away, where he has a game and he links everything up. He creates space for others. In that game he assisted. But then ultimately he's always going to be remembered for his goals. That'll always be his reputation, even though he's such a good link-up man. So it was fantastic to see him get a well-deserved goal on Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely was. And great analysis as well from your good self with that Jorginho skip just before just to sort of rope handling in before peeling back and nodding into the back of the net. It's sort of stuff you don't really see with the naked eye when the game's in full flow, but it's so clever from Morelos to have that in his locker, to know to do that and read the cross so well. And the header itself was terrific. The keeper was not getting that one off the inside of the post. So, and it's great for him because, of course, he's had a little bit of a barren spell of late as well. And there's a lot more to Morelos' game than just goals. He's all-round play for me. I know folk have maybe had a little go at him recently for not doing enough, and again, it's based on we know what he can produce. But yeah, I felt on Sunday that he was right in the mood for the game. As you said, he loves playing against Hibs, he gave them a torrid time, and it was good to see them both getting on the score sheet as well, because of course Roofe came on, and there's a debate whether Roofe and Morelos can play up top together. So it was good to see them both getting on the score sheet. 2 fantastic headers as well. So they're both terrific players. There's no doubt in that. You just hope going forward that they can go on a bit of a scoring run, because Alfredo himself will not be happy with his goal return so far this season. He'll be wanting more, knowing him. But yeah, that was a fantastic performance on Sunday.
Absolutely, and you can read more about that in detail on the site this morning, with lots of detail on his pass maps and more to get a full kind of recap of what Morelos did well to win the game. You can subscribe to read articles like this every day for just £1 a month, less than a paper a day, for top quality Rangers content coming through every single day, which you have access to, with data and analysis from industry leading suppliers that we will put to you to the best of our ability. So remember to go over to the website, Click subscribe and you can take up that offer of just £1 a month. We'll be back tomorrow morning as we continue to ease you through this international break and speak about Rangers until the next time they play next weekend. Until then, enjoy the rest of your